Hey guys, welcome to our 10 episode deep dive of the Gulf Shores, Alabama market. I'm your host, Avery Carl, and I wanted to let you know really quick before we get started that we do have some supplemental materials for you to go along with this podcast on our website, theshorttermshop.com. So what we have there is the current purchase prices in this market. So you can set yourself up a search, look at properties, do all that fun real estate stuff, kind of like Zillow. We've got it on our website, and you can check out exactly how much it costs to buy a condo or single family home or townhouse in the Gulf Shores market right now. Also, to go along with that, we have the AirDNA data, thanks to our friends over at AirDNA, for this market for the past few years. So you can compare purchase prices versus the AirDNA data and kind of do some analysis there. We've also got a really cool calculator on the website that I built around short-term rental investing to go along with all these things. Or if you know you want to buy in Gulf Shores and you're ready to start talking to an agent, you can reach out to us at agents@theshorttermshop.com and we'll get you connected with our agent in Gulf Shores. And last but not least, if you just really like us and you want to hang out with us more, we'd love to see more of you. So there's a few ways you can do that. You can join our Facebook group. It's called Short-Term Rental, Long-Term Wealth, same title as my book. It's a community of over 60,000 investors sharing best practices and just kind of being friends with each other. It's pretty cool. Or if you want to talk to us in person, you can do that every Thursday. You can sign up at strquestions.com. We have a 1-hour lunch hour, just office hours, where you can ask us anything you want about short-term rental investing. So we appreciate you guys listening, and please reach out to us with any questions. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Join us in our community on Facebook as well. And I guess we'll get to the episode now. Thanks, guys. Hey, y'all. Welcome to episode 3 of our limited series on investing in Gulf Shores. I almost forgot what market I was talking about. Sorry about that. I've got the same cast of characters as episode 1 and 2, except we're adding Mr. John Bianchi to the mix. John, you want to introduce yourself?
Sounds good. Thanks, Avery, for having me. I love doing these little mini series on these different markets. My name is John Bianchi. I'm the Airbnb data guy. I am the head of data for TechVestor, which is the largest short-term rental investment fund in America. I also have my own Airbnb data consulting company where I help people find profitable properties, and I have a bunch of free courses on YouTube as well. I pretty much live and breathe Airbnb data. That's all I do.
All right. Just the person we need for an episode like this. So let's dive into it. So guys, just as a disclaimer, we're only talking about income numbers on this episode. We are talking about expenses in the next episode. So don't come away from this episode going, well, they didn't say anything about expenses. We got a whole episode of that for y'all. So we're just talking about income here. And we have a few just quick definitions we want to go over that a lot of investors throw around when they're talking about analyzing these things. Cash on cash return, cap rate, NOI, a bunch of different things. So does anybody, I try to say anyone and anybody at the same time, want to take a stab at what cash on cash return is, or I can
if you want.
Okay, go for it, Tim.
All right. So cash on cash is basically when you look at your total net number from a specific year. Usually, a lot of people look at it in year one and divide it into the total amount of money that you put into that property. So you take your total net and divide it by what you put in, and it'll kick you out a percentage, and that's your cash on cash return. So it's a great way to measure like a snap in time. I use it. I don't think it's the end all be all, because people sometimes were like, oh, is this year? Is this different? It changes all the time, and so it's a great way to when you're buying a new property, you get a snapshot of what it looks like on that day. So it's fantastic, just kind of a measuring stick of a property. And for short-term rentals, it's a great measuring stick because it's just kind of knowing where you're at, and gives you a point of reference for making improvements and things like that. So,
all right. And that is typically the best. There's no exact perfect way to measure the performance of a short-term rental, but cash on cash return is kind of the best we have at the moment until somebody comes up with a new formula. And
I want to touch on that a little more. Okay. Sorry.
Go ahead. No,
it wasn't super clear. So when I say the amount of money you put in, it is not the purchase price. It is what the money you put, your down payment essentially, and then any other upfront costs. It's usually your down payment and your closing costs is usually what goes into cash on cash. So it's the cash out of your pocket you spent, not the purchase price. I just wanted to clarify that. So
out of curiosity, Tim, would you also include your furniture costs in that and any renovation costs?
It kind of depends. I'll say loosely yes, but generally most of the properties that we're looking at are pretty turnkey. If you're looking at a renovation, then yes, I do kind of figure that in. If you're looking at planning on a renovation right out of the get-go, then yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a really, really good point, Tim. So if you guys are looking at a value add property, and it's really important to not try to mix different strategies and different ways to measure things, because you're almost always going to be wrong in one area or another. You kind of can't have everything. But if you're buying a value add property that needs $20,000, $30,000 worth of work, but when you're done, you'll be able to make X amount more and the property will be worth $100,000 more. Well, your cash on cash return's not going to look really good if you've got a $30,000 to $50,000 renovation right out of the gate. So if you're doing something like that, cash on cash return in year one is probably not what you're going to want to look at. So I've seen people who say, I want to do a value add, but this is my first investment. And they're like, well, I can't make the cash on cash return numbers work. Well, that's because of the value add. So do it year two.
Another thing on that too is that can vary wildly on how you finance the property. If you go into a value add property and the bank, like if it's a major one and the bank knows it, you're not going to be getting a normal loan, and you might even be using like a rehab type loan. So again, that money may not even be coming out of your pocket. It could be part of the loan structure when you're buying a property like that. And I've done several of those myself. So in that case, you don't take such a beating because it's not coming. It's part of your loan. It all gets rolled up into it. So it just depends.
Yeah. Yeah. And another one that a lot of people use is cap rate. And I'm not going to get too far in the weeds on this because I don't want to confuse any listeners, but cap rate is a way to measure the profitability of a property. It typically is best utilized in commercial real estate. Short-term rentals are still residential real estate as of today. That could potentially change in the future as the asset class continues to grow and establish itself. But in commercial real estate, the appraisal value of a property is determined by the income of that property. And that's what cap rate measures. So the higher the cap rate, which is determined by the income and a few other things, the higher the cap rate, the more the property is worth. In commercial, when you come over here to residential, which is where short-term rentals are, the appraisal value of a property is determined based on residential sold comps. So if you have two houses next door to each other, one makes $100,000 a year and one is not a rental at all, makes $0, and the not rental just sold for X amount, the rental is also worth X amount because it's based on residential sold comps. So it's kind of a weird asset class because yes, the income can determine how much an investor will pay for a property. But as far as the appraisal value is concerned with the bank, it's still appraised based on residential sold comps. So while it can help to know what the cap rate of a property is, it really doesn't matter as much as when you're looking at cash on cash return. Another thing that, God, y'all, sorry with the ums today. I've been off for a few weeks, so I'm trying to get back into it. So let's talk about cash flow, because cash flow, you can either invest based on what your cash on cash return is going to be or what the cash flow is going to be. And they are inversely proportionate to one another. So does anybody want to take that, or I can?
Well, it's kind of exactly what you just said. I mean, if you put the more money you put down, it actually hurts your cash on cash calculation because you're putting more money, that your net is probably going to stay about the same no matter how much money you put down. So it hurts your cash on cash calculation. However, because you're putting down so much more, typically your mortgage is going to be less or even zero if you pay all cash for the property. So that would, your cash flow in your hand is going to be more that way. Where conversely, like you said, if you do a minimal amount down, and use leverage the property completely, your cash on cash is going to look fantastic, but you may have little to no cash flow. So it is a very fine balancing act. Now, it's another one of those things where there's not a wrong answer other than what is important to you. I've had a lot of clients that go on both sides of that fence. I've had clients that they don't even care about the cash flow because they're in it for other reasons. And I've had clients that that's all they care about is the cash flow. So cash on cash, they may not have a lot to put in up front. It's a balancing act. You got to figure out what's right for you. So, but you're right. It's one or the other.
I had a client that just closed on a 4-bedroom and before the summer, and he didn't have enough time to do what he wanted to do during the summer, but he was going to close in this other area and make it a 5-bedroom. So during the off season, he's going to be spending more cash in his first year. So it is going to affect his cash on cash return, no doubt, to do that renovation or the upgrade. But next year he's going to make significantly more money by adding an extra room. So is it a bad thing that he's getting not as good cash on cash this year? I mean, I don't think so, because next year it's going to look pretty good.
I think that nails why it's important to understand the metrics, but don't live and die on one. Just understand what they are, and you got to use that as a tool to help you make decisions. But there's not a singular, this is the absolute, yes or no answer to it. Am I going to buy this property?
Right. And you might change which metric you use over the course of your investing career. So when I first started and we were scraping pennies out of the bottom of my purse and like out of our cars and stuff to make down payments, the cash on cash was really important to us because we needed as much leverage as possible because we didn't have the cash to make big down payments. Now that we've been doing this a long time, we've got a lot of properties, we've got more cash available to invest in things. We're really more concerned with cash flow and how much is this going to add to our monthly income per month than the actual cash on cash return. And I had a client one time who they wanted to put down 30%. They said, we're going to put 30% down because we want to increase our cash flow. We said, great. And they said, but I can't find any deals that are above like X cash on cash return. We're like, well, it's because you're putting down 30%. Cut that to 20 or cut it to 15. And your cash on cash return will double. So you kind of can't have the best of both there. You kind of have to decide which one is the most important. And also, in terms of finding deals, it's years ago in the early adoption days of self-managed short-term rental properties, there were deals just laying around on the MLS that would do 40, 50% cash on cash return before there were a lot of sophisticated operators and self-managers around. Now that the asset class is really, really established, it's more similar to investing in multifamily in terms of finding deals than it used to be. And here's what I mean by that. So in multifamily, you're not going to go find an apartment building in most cases that has a really high cap rate. But what you can find is an apartment building that needs some updates that you can increase that rent to then increase the cap rate. So you're looking for the opportunity rather than whatever's laying around doing X amount. Same thing now with short-term rentals. You're not necessarily going to find that super high cash on cash return property just sitting there already performing at that level, but you can find opportunities to buy a property that can get to that level. You just have to look for the opportunity of the deal rather than what it's doing right this second.
Yeah, I like to use the word, income potential. You're looking for what, not just what it stands today, but what's the income potential of this once I get my hands on it and do our thing to it and put our own personal spin to it. So
I like that word.
Yeah. Which I just want to mention, that's my entire world. That's all I do.
Income potential.
Income potential. Trying to find the best potential property that you can get. It used to be easy, but now it's not. And so you really have to understand the data to be able to make a good decision based off of like what other people are doing. Right.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So John, let's hear from you. Let's first hear from how you have looked at and analyzed the data, kind of what your process is, and then we'll move into some more specific questions.
Okay. So for myself, I always pull a report for every area that I look into, and it's my own reports. So I pull those reports out and, I'm able to see all of the data from each different location and bedroom size. And so I always like to look at all of the data at a bedroom by bedroom count. And then what I like to do is go through I like to go through a certain bedroom count. So that's like all the 4 bedrooms. And I go from who's making the most to who's making the least. And what I'll do is I'll analyze each one of the homes to try and figure out why some people are making more than others. And really what I'm just looking for is some sort of pattern to tell me what my home needs to look like to be able to hit an X amount of revenue, right? And as an example, going through the 4 bedrooms for the Gulf Shores area, to make over $100,000, you have to have a home that's along the water in some sort of way. At least that's what I was seeing with the data that I was doing, with the research that I was doing, right? And then if you were to make a little bit under 100,000, sort of between that like 75 to 100,000, you're starting to see homes that are more so in these like HOA communities, a little bit further off the water, but they've got a pool. They're kind of all very similar. They're in a little shared area, right? And that's where you're kind of getting revenue, or homes that are getting that revenue, right? And so I'm doing that first to get a feel of what the homes look like, what's working, what's not, right? And then what I'm trying to do is I'm always trying to figure out what is the absolute best thing to purchase within this area. So now that I know what the homes look like and how much revenue they're driving, I'll then go onto Zillow and I'll take a look at how much those homes cost, right? And I'll try and figure out where's the biggest inefficiency. In other words, like where can I make the most amount of revenue for the least amount of dollars in? And I'll do this across all the different bedroom counts to try and figure out where the most opportunity is. And as a quick summary, if I were to be going into Gulf Shores, I probably would be looking for a 2-bedroom condo that had waterfront views, because 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo that had waterfront views that was designed really well, because from what I was seeing, that they were reasonably priced and they had a very consistent revenue potential, meaning that a 2-bedroom could almost make as much as a 3-bedroom, if not more, for whatever reason, right? It always tends to be the reason is usually based off of the type of guests that are traveling there. So in other words, it's like a small family. They only need 2 rooms, and they're just looking for a great condo, and they're going to get a 2-bedroom and they end up renting out that one, right? So anyways, that's sort of my process and where I landed when it came to what I thought was the best. I can go into more detail, but I'm trying not to. So I'm trying to keep it simple. But if you want to ask any additional questions, just let me know.
Hey, John, I got thanks for all that info. That's great. I got a follow-up question. Just to, like, Tim has a 1-bedroom, correct me if I'm wrong, but it has built-in bunks.
Right.
So I had noticed that the numbers that I've seen from people managing those can be comparable to 2-bedrooms. What's your thought on that?
So I think that falls into sleeping capacity. It's a 1-bedroom with built-in bunk beds in a hallway, which acts kind of like a 2nd bedroom, and then it's got 1.5 bathrooms. So it kind of falls into that. It's tickling a 2-bedroom. So
tickling a 2-bedroom. That's
I like the word tickle. So I use a lot.
You just pictured a 1-bedroom tickling a 2-bedroom. No, well, you can from what I was seeing with the data, you can with a 1-bedroom definitely make as much as a 2-bedroom, but it kind of goes to what Tim was just saying, where it's like you're almost tickling a 2-bedroom, right? Like you're getting really close to it with the occupancy and like what you're doing. So I definitely see the potential there. Now, mind you, I don't have any homes there, so I haven't analyzed the data for like weeks on end. I'm doing my process of like trying to get a good grip of the location before we hop on this call, right? And what I was noticing, and Tim, you'd probably be better, or Jonathan, you'd probably be better at this as well, is I was actually seeing that the 1-bedrooms were almost the same price as the 2-bedrooms, and the 1-bedroom revenue was consistently more so like $20,000 less on average, right? I'm not saying that a 1-bedroom couldn't do as well as a 2-bedroom, but I'm just seeing on average they're a little bit lower. So are you seeing that 1-bedrooms are fairly close to 2-bedrooms for purchase price?
It's very dependent on the complex. There are some that are pretty significantly off, which I feel like there is some value there if it's a pretty good bit off of the purchase price from a 2-bedroom. But there are certain instances where they're pretty close in price.
Yeah, it seemed like that when I was going through, and I just, once again, quick glance, but I was looking at it, I'm like, man, I would be getting a 2-bedroom for sure, right? And then but the 3-bedrooms seemed quite a bit more expensive.
The 3-bedrooms definitely are a good bit more expensive than the 2s.
Right. So then, therefore, the 2s being the best potential thing, right? Because the 3-bedrooms are so much more, and the 1-bedrooms are kind of close to the 2-bedrooms, but the 2-bedrooms have a lot of revenue potential. But once again, if I'd be doing it, I'd be just trying to get that one that had the oceanfront view. Kind of like where you can take a photo of the living room and the entire screen to the outdoor is all blue. You know what I mean? Because it's all just staring right at the water. So anyways, that would be my go for that area.
I like that. I like that a lot, because that means this is an area that you can, it's a blue chip area, but you can still get into it without having to go over $1 million necessarily, which a lot of blue chip markets are like now.
Yeah, that was the part that was kind of getting me, where I'm like, okay, well, these homes, at the top, the best of the best, the 4-bedrooms, 5-bedrooms, even the single family 3-bedrooms, they look amazing. They're on the water. They're producing a good amount of revenue, but I'm looking at how much they cost. And I'm like, well, this is for the person that's not looking for cash flow. Let's put it that way. If you want one of those homes, you're not looking for cash flow. But if you're one of the somebody who is looking for cash flow, that 2-bedroom is probably what makes the most sense. So that's my take.
I love that.
Are we also discussing Orange Beach on this, or just Gulf Shores?
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you got?
So Orange Beach, I actually was looking up the data for there as well, obviously. And when I was looking at the home values, it looked like the 2-bedrooms were literally like $100,000 to $200,000 more on average than in Gulf Shores. Is that accurate?
Well, they're pretty scarce when it comes to housing in Orange Beach is available. And yes, one of them is like Beach Village Resort. Those 2 bedrooms are definitely up to the prices of many, even 3-bedroom, really nice condos, and some 3-bedroom houses, even in Gulf Shores. So yes, I would say that they are more expensive in Orange Beach for sure.
Okay, so that's what I was seeing as well. But then the revenue wasn't much higher. It wasn't like, you spend an extra $100,000 in Orange Beach and you make the proportionate amount more. It seemed like, so in other words, Gulf Shores 2-bedroom just seemed to be the thing to purchase within the entire area. Not trying to say that nothing else was worth purchasing, but my job is always to try and figure out like what's the best, right? And so that's where I kind of landed as to what I thought was the best.
What's the second best?
Probably that's a good question. I was about to jump right into it, but I'm like,
a 1-bedroom that tickles a 2-bedroom.
Yeah, there you go. Tickling 1-bedroom.
Tickling 1-bedroom.
That or like a 3-bedroom condo. I don't know. So the coolest real estate to own down there is obviously a single family home, right? Maybe the second best, if you say you didn't want to go with a condo, then what I would be looking at is a 3-bedroom, probably in an HOA. So not on the water, not and sort of in an HOA, had some sort of community pool, was not too far of a walk to the beach. So you're still like walking potential, but you're not like looking out at the beach, right? And I would go 3-bedroom because honestly, like the single family homes that were 3-bedrooms compared to 4s and 5s, there was not a huge difference in the amount of revenue being made between them. And you want to see a huge difference if you're paying up quite a bit more to go to a 4 to a 5, right? So therefore, if you can get a 3 and still make a good amount of revenue, just get the 3, right? And then once again, like being walking distance rather than like on the beach is a lot cheaper, more affordable. And if you're in the HOA, you're going to have the community pool. So to me, that was like sort of the sweet spot where I was like, because I did find a 4-bedroom home that was under $1 million that had the potential to almost hit 100,000. And it's like, well, that's a nice combo. You know what I mean? In comparison to the $2 million on the beach home, that's not going to cash flow for you at all. So anyway.
I agree with off the ocean or off the Gulf, walking distance for a family home. I mean, the on the water single family home is by no arguments the second piece of property you can get, but from just sex appeal, But I mean, from an investment standpoint, I think going back is a lot better money.
Agreed. And there's something else I was going to say on that as well. Oh, if you're going to do that, I always strongly recommend that you have a sort of like a drone shot image, or even just like Google satellite screenshot, and then show how far away of a walk you are to the beach. I think that's a game changer thing that you can show, because like if you can't see the beach from the home, but you're still walking distance, make sure people know that, so that they're like, okay, well, this is still like a lot closer and it's a fraction of the cost of this other home. You know what I mean? That is on the beach. So it's like, we just take 5 minutes to walk there. I always see that one as an important image to have.
I agree.
I have a question for you, John. On these houses you looked at, did you look into Fort Morgan also, or is it just within the city of Gulf Shores and Orange Beach?
I actually just did Gulf Shores and Orange Beach.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. I was just curious because there's some houses like in Fort Morgan. If you go to the west, there's a bunch of houses that a lot of my clients are hitting really nice numbers that are not in the HOAs or anything, but they just have really good beach access. They're just on these little streets very far west. I mean, there's really nothing around them. I mean, there is Tack and Jackson, some restaurants, but they just pet friendly rentals, and they do incredibly well from what my clients are reporting.
Interesting. I wish I did a little more research. I'd have a better take on it, but
no, I agree. I mean, it's weird down there because you go from Orange Beach to Gulf Shores to Fort Morgan, and the landscape quickly changes, and just the whole feel of it changes. And the single families are definitely more favored the further towards Fort Morgan and into Fort Morgan you get. So
interesting. Cool. I wish I looked more into it. I wish I could.
Oh no, this is great info. I just was curious if you had looked at Fort Morgan.
Yeah. There was something else I wanted to add in here too, and this is sort of the part that I feel like it's missed the most when it comes to analyzing comps. Is people look at like 4 bedrooms and they'll go, well, this place has 4 bedrooms, I have 4 bedrooms, therefore I'm going to make the same amount of money. I know that's an oversimplification. Not everybody does that. But my job is to figure out, first off, once again, what's the best thing to purchase within that market, but then how do you hit the revenue target with that home? Like, what does it need to do? And that really comes down to design, amenities, photos, those sort of things, right? Which to me are, they're not numbers, but they're their data, right? It's a different kind of data. And it's as important as everything else. And so the reason I'm bringing it up is because I actually like tried to find a superior listing in Gulf Shores, like an amazing, beautiful, well put together listing that wasn't a home along the beach, right? And the interesting thing was that there literally was none. I found one that was like on the edge of what I would consider to be really good. Now, mind you, I didn't go through every single last listing. I tend to just stay right to those like high performing ones because I'm very curious. But when I'm talking about like beautiful, perfect listing, I mean, the design is very strategically well thought out design. They've gone above and beyond with their amenities and the sort of features that they put together. And they've like put a lot of effort to create a great experience for this. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because if you go to like some of the top tier markets like Scottsdale and Gatlinburg, like these listings nowadays are over the top and they're really providing an amazing design and experience and everything. And that's allowing them to make more money. Right. And so I always try to find one of those within a market because then that tells me what amenities and design are actually working within that area. And I couldn't find that many that actually did it. There was one that was good, had a really great design, and it actually was at the top. And what I do want to say, not 100% certain if this piece of data was accurate, but the second highest comp in my data set for the most money being made in Gulf Shores was actually Bill Faith's home. And
I was just about to say, I'm sure it's one of his.
Yeah, I saw it and I was like, I recognize this listing. But the issue was the data, the way it looked. I know he does a lot of direct booking, so I don't know how accurate it 100% is. But he was one of the only people to have like a fire pit. He actually had photos of his lounge chairs and his pool setup. He had like all these additional amenities and features and designs that I was like, okay, not a lot of people have these. And I know this because I'm looking at all top properties, right? A lot of people are just relying on the fact that it's on a beach, but it's like, if you can just take it that 5 steps further, you're going to be able to beat your competition in that area. So with that being said, you're talking about, revenue opportunity. Was that the word you used, Tim?
Yes.
Potential. Revenue potential. Yeah. So
Sounds like there's a lot of opportunity though from bouncing into your opportunity words. That sounds ripe for somebody to do some work.
Yeah, that's what I mean, right? So like I was intrigued by that. And I was like, I thought Gulf Shores would have some of these like superior listings and that those would be the ones you'd see at the top, but they really didn't. Everyone's just relying on the beach and the walk, how close it is. But I truly believe that if you added a lot more to it, you would see a difference there.
Yeah. So you're saying, because I have like 3 points that I want to ask/make on this. You're saying that in this blue chip market that a lot of people love to talk about how saturated it is, you're saying there's a ton of opportunity because not everybody's really like going the extra mile.
Yes. So 2 things on that. One, remind me to talk about saturation because I did a whole report on it. And 2, 100%. If I'm being honest, I'll call it out. I think that there's a lot of like okay listings. I don't think that they're great listings by any means. Honestly, go look at Joshua Tree, go look at Scottsdale, go look at Gatlinburg, and go look at the top of the top listings and what they're doing. You're going to see a difference in comparison to what you're seeing at Gulf Shores. You really are. So I think there's potential.
That's exciting to me. Like that like makes me want to go buy another one and set it up.
Yeah. Make sure it's a 2-bedroom condo. If you are going to do but that's so actually somebody's probably going to hear me say that and be like, well, how do you out amenity a condo? And it's just the design. So if you do get a condo, it's the design and it's the photos and it's like throwing our arcade games in the living room area or something, or shuffleboard behind the couch, right? Just or adding like turf to the patio and hanging lights and more comfortable seating. And that's how you win with a condo, right? Is you just go that extra level. But it's really all the design that matters. And I wish I could share listings and show you guys because like there's one listing that did it properly in my opinion. And you can see they're right at the top with everybody else. So, but anyways,
we can link that in the show notes too if you want. If you want to send it to us.
For sure.
Okay. So I have 2 more points I want to make and I'm saying them out loud so nobody lets me forget them. I want to hear about the saturation and then I know a lot of people didn't have a lot of great amenities for you to maybe pull a full report on that, but what are the top amenities? So you choose which one you want to do first.
Okay, well, I'm going to stick on amenities and then we'll jump over because, we've been going on it. So I honestly, first off, I kind of mentioned it already, but I would say design is number 1. I think that design and photos, I think are the 2 things that are probably missed the most, especially in these condos. For whatever reason, people get lazy when the beach is right there. You know what I mean? They're like, well, everyone's just going to be hanging out on the beach. You're like, yeah, they are. But they're still going to pay more for your home if it's a sexier design, if it's a cooler design, if it's properly designed and flows all the way through. So design is going to be like the first thing, and just because there's not a lot of land. But then the other thing is, well, I already mentioned all the condos, so I'm going to focus on single family homes. So if you get a single family home, most of these are on stilts, and you've got this bunch of space underneath, and it's so underutilized. It's not even funny. Like they'll have like a picnic table down there, and they'll take a couple photos, maybe some hanging lights, but that's it. But like if you have that entire area down there, create it into a little oasis where people can hang out and have a good time, and on a rainy day, be able to spend the day down there, still be outside and still get to enjoy things. Have some sort of like Bill Faith's got one of those fire pits that's like a smokeless fire pit, right? Add that down there. I think there should be a fire pit in almost every single Airbnb across the board, because it's just something that a lot of people love to do. And so, if you have the space for it, add a fire pit. If you have the space for it, add a lounge area with hanging lights above it, and take really beautiful photos of it. Add some color to it as well. As many hanging lights as you can think. Like if you buy them, just kind of have the thought in your head, like, I think I have too many hanging lights. That would be the right number of hanging lights to have, and like, I don't know, those are the main things. The way that I kind of think about it is like, you want to get the main things, and the main things are the fire pit, the lounge area, the picnic table, the hanging lights. Those are the stuff where it's going to allow for people to socialize and have a good time. Now, if you want to go above and beyond, that's where you're going to get into like the putting green, or the potentially a hot tub, which I don't know what the temperature is like there, but maybe a hot tub can help extend your season a little bit, right? Because maybe it starts to get cold in October, November, and you're like, well, people would enjoy the hot tub a little bit. So it extends your potential to get booked in those timeframes. And that's how I'd be thinking about it. So those are without continually going into more and more and more amenities. I think if people just focus on those core ones that I just mentioned, it'll make a difference to their revenue.
I don't want to Debbie down or anything here. I just want to make a note. If you are a beachfront condo or beachfront anything, watch what lighting you're using. You can't just put any color lights on. They are very, very strict about, because there's some regulations with the sea turtles and stuff. So you can go wild, but there's a certain color light you got to use. So do your research on that.
Yeah, over here it's got to be red or orange.
Same. That's just if you're beachfront. If you're anything facing the sand, it's highly regulated on lights.
Yeah, and bury your holes if you dig holes on the beach. We had over here on 30A, we had recently, like 2 weeks ago, some kids dug a big hole, and then the next day a lady was jogging. They obviously didn't fill it back in, and there was like a 200-pound sea turtle upside down in the hole, and she was still alive. They were able to get her out, but like it took several people to dig this turtle out, and it's just not cool. So anyway, that's beside the point.
But I'm glad they got it out alive. That's nice.
Yeah.
I just didn't want 1,000 people to go out and run and put bright white lights on their decks of their condos and get a couple.
See, I always mention this, where it's like all the suggestions I always give, I don't have local knowledge, so I'm just kind of like thinking of it from a high level. And that's why I love that, you guys are on this call, because you're like, hey, remember this though. You know what I mean? You kind of shoot down and bring it into reality of what's possible within those areas.
Yes. Data, enemy method, and local agent knowledge are the recipe for being able to get a good property and not make any mistakes. And you can still make mistakes, but minimize mistakes.
Well said. Yeah, exactly. Do you want to jump into saturation?
Yeah, let's hear about this.
Sure. So I found this interesting. This was just Gulf Shores, not Orange Beach, but I'm sure it's fairly similar. First off, for people who are like, how do you figure out if a market's saturated or not? It's a supply and demand thing, right? And so you can get the revenue and the supply numbers of a market. And so you can figure out how much revenue was made year over year. So is it increasing or decreasing? And you can also figure out how much supply was brought on year over year. So how many new Airbnb listings? And as an example, if the supply increases by 10%, you want the revenue to also increase by 10%, because what's happening there is that the total market is still making the exact same amount of money year over year. Okay. It's not a perfect science, but it's close. And so what you want is always for the revenue to either be doing as well as the supply or more. Okay. And so as an example, how do I explain this? The revenue has been outpacing supply for the past 5 quarters straight. Okay. So what that means is like Q1 of 2023 compared to Q1 of 2022, the revenue was 20% higher than the supply. Revenue was 20% higher than the supply, which means that each individual listing was roughly making about 20% more year over year between that time frame, right? If we go to Q4 of 2022 to 2021, it's up 39%. The quarter before that, it's 18%. The quarter before that, it's 8%. The quarter before that was 23%. So it's been, in other words, revenue has just consistently been outpacing the new supply that's going into the Gulf Shores area, which means it's not an oversaturated market at all by any means. So if you're in that market and you're not doing well, it's you, not the market. Just letting you know.
Hard truths.
Yeah. Sorry. Sorry to tell you.
Well, I mean, you did say that there's a lot of opportunity. So if you've already got a property, I mean, you're already halfway there. All you have to do is improve your amenities, improve your listing, and that's not too terribly difficult to do. So I think that this is a really important conversation because a lot of people talk about Gulf Shores. There's a lot of people out there that, obviously Bill, myself, that talk about Gulf Shores, and a lot of people investing. I thought there were a lot of sophisticated operators. So this is an area that, since it's being talked about a lot of people want to just say, oh, it's saturated, because they hear that word all the time. They hear Gulf Shores all the time. And that's really interesting to hear that it isn't. So my hypothesis, or it's not really a hypothesis, I guess it is, that just because a market has a lot of listings does not mean that it's saturated is true.
Of course not. Of course not. I mean, New York, as an example, has like 100,000 hotel rooms. And when you hear that, you're like, yeah, but it's New York. I'm like, yeah, but it's relative, right? So New York, of course, will have millions of visitors every year. So having 100,000 hotel rooms isn't that insane. But then if you just it's the ratio between number of people traveling and the number of spaces to sleep, right? And so, as an example, Gulf Shores has enough space for people to sleep, right? Like in comparison to the number of people who are actually traveling there. And actually, the number of listings has decreased as of Q1 of 2023. So it used to be, its peak was Q2 of 2022 at 7,600 listings, and now it's down to 6,850 listings.
That's a lot of listings that went down.
It is, but at the same time, the revenue is, and that actually could be, so the lowest time frame where revenue outpacing supply, like the smallest it was actually during the peak listings, which would have been 7,600. And the revenue difference is only 8%, right? So that would have been like fairly close, but now it's down to 6,800 listings, and the revenue is outpacing by 20% year over year.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is fascinating.
Yeah, it really is.
I'm kind of a hillbilly, and I just look at license plates and stuff, and having something to actually back it up sounds fantastic. I mean, when I go down there, there's license plates from everywhere, and lots of them. And that's kind of, the traffic gauge, and Jonathan knows all about that. If you can't get a mile in an hour, then that means that there's a lot of people there. So,
and my wife's known for cursing out all the tourists, and I'm like, babe, we need the tourists. She sees those license plates, she's like, oh, these snowbirds, babe, they're bringing some money.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. So, John, is there anything else, any other points that you want to make before we go? This has been really fascinating. I kind of thought I knew what was going on in this market. I really actually don't. So that was a really enlightening data. It's always fascinating to listen to you present the data that you found. I always learn something new.
I appreciate that. Honestly, I don't really have anything else that I wanted to go over. Those are the main things that I wanted to touch on. Anyways, those are the main things I want to touch on. I think I think there's a market with definitely potential. It's probably not going to be your best cash flowing market out of every market that's possible, but it could be a good equity play for sure, and a good place to have a vacation home as well. So anyways, that's my take.
All right. Awesome. Well, guys, if you want to learn more about the Gulf Shores market, you can always join one of our Thursday Q&A calls. You can join those at strquestions.com. You can also join our Facebook group. It's the same title as my book. It's called Short-Term Rental, Long-Term Wealth. If you want to work with Jonathan I almost said the Smoky, sorry. I've been dealing with that all morning. If you want to work with Jonathan in Gulf Shores, email us at agents@theshorttermshop.com, or you can get him directly at jonathan@theshorttermshop.com. And John, where can people find you on the internet?
My handle is at the Airbnb Data Guy. I strongly recommend checking me out on YouTube. I've got 3 free courses there, and then you'll find me everywhere else from there. So, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again so much for coming on. It's always a very educational experience. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, y'all.